Today's video is sponsored by Home Title Lock. From terrible design choices to the kinds of risks most passengers never think about, I'm Mike with List 25, and here are 25 scary airline facts that'll make you nervous. 25. There are explosive charges inside the engines. Let's ignore the fact that an airplane's entire wing is filled with highly flammable fuel for a second. Yes, that's where it's stored. If that doesn't give you goosebumps, here's something else. Each engine has one or two small explosive charges called squibs. If an engine fire breaks out, the charge detonates, breaking the seal on a pressurized fire suppressant canister that floods the engine with chemicals to smother the flames. Cargo bays use a similar system, so it just goes to prove that in aviation, sometimes the best way to fight fire is with explosives. 24. That plastic-wrapped blanket might be dirty. If you're planning to get cozy at 35,000 feet, well, do yourself a favor and BYOB. Bring your own blanket. An investigation by the Wall Street Journal found that most airline blankets are washed only every 5 to 30 days, and in between, they're simply reused by multiple passengers. If you're lucky, you'll get one on its first day of the wash. If not, well, let's just say you're getting up close and personal with whoever had it before you. 23. Pilots sometimes fall asleep at the controls. Fatigue is a huge issue in aviation. In Sweden and Norway, 3 out of 5 pilots admitted to making mistakes due to exhaustion. In Germany, that number is 4 out of 5. A 2012 European Cockpit Association survey found that 40% of British pilots admitted to falling asleep at the controls of a passenger jet. Even worse, a third of them woke up to find their co-pilot asleep too. 22. The water is disgusting. If you're in the habit of enjoying a cup of coffee or tea on a flight, you might want to rethink that choice. A 2019 airline water study found that airplane tap water, used in both the galley and lavatories, can contain E. coli and coliform bacteria, both of which can be found in feces. That means the same water used to wash your hands is also being used to brew your in-flight coffee and tea. Whew, no wonder so many flight attendants refuse to drink it. 21. You only have 90 seconds to escape a burning plane. If you're inside a plane that happens to be on fire, you have 90 seconds to get out. And no, that's not a random number. It's the time it takes for flames to spread through the cabin, which is why the FAA requires all planes to be fully evacuated within that window. Your best chance of making it? Sit within 5 rows of an exit. The farther away you are, the harder it is to get out in time. Did you know scammers can literally steal your home right out from under you? The FBI calls it house stealing, and it's a growing real estate scam targeting American homeowners. Here's how it works. Criminals forge your signature on one document, use a fake notary stamp, pay a small fee, and file it with your local recorder's office. And just like that, your home title has been transferred out of your name. Then they can take out loans using your equity as collateral or even sell the property behind your back. And you won't even know it's happening until you start getting collection or foreclosure notices. So let me ask you, when was the last time you checked your home title? Well, if you're like me, the answer is never. And that's exactly what scammers are counting on. That's why I trust Home Title Lock. Their $1 million triple lock protection helps keep your home and equity safe. Here's what you get. Immediate 24/7 monitoring of your property. Urgent alerts if there are any changes. And if fraud should happen, their US-based restoration team will spend up to $1 million to fix the fraud and restore your title at no additional cost. And here's the best part. I've teamed up with Home Title Lock to give you a free title history report so you can find out if you're already a victim, and access to your personal title expert, a $250 value just for signing up. Go to HometitleLock.com and use my promo code LIST25, or click on the link in the description. That's HometitleLock.com, promo code LIST25 to get the protection and peace of mind you deserve. And now back to the video. 20. Airplane food is getting worse. Food safety on flights has seriously gone downhill, with reports of spoiled meat, food poisoning, and some absolutely disgusting surprises. Just looking at 2024 alone, Delta passengers were served moldy chicken that left more than a dozen people sick. An Air India flyer found a dead cockroach in her omelet, And on a Scandinavian Airlines flight, a mouse literally ran out of a meal tray. There have also been E. coli concerns and alarming reports of airline caterers cutting corners on cleanliness. When in doubt, it might be safer to stick to a sealed bag of chips, or just bring your own snacks. 19. Your oxygen mask won't last as long as you think. Those small yellow masks that drop in an emergency don't give you pure oxygen like a hospital or scuba tank. Instead, they're powered by a chemical reaction. Pulling the mask down ignites a small lump of metal which burns and releases oxygen as a byproduct. The air you breathe will be hot, slightly smoky, and have a strange smell, but it's enough to keep you conscious. The catch is, they only last about 12 minutes. That's usually just enough time for pilots to get the plane to a lower, breathable altitude. And if you're wondering, their oxygen is bottled and lasts about 2 years. 18. You may be flying with only one engine. But that shouldn't scare you too much. In most parts of the world, older 3- and 4-engine planes are being replaced with more fuel-efficient 2-engine jets. And luckily, they're built to handle far more than you might think. If one engine fails, the plane can still take off, fly, and land without an issue. Even if both engines go out, it won't just drop. It can glide nearly 100 miles from 30,000 feet before touching down, just like we saw with the successful emergency landing of US Airways Flight 1549 on the Hudson River in 2009. 17. Turbulence is getting worse. Right now, turbulence costs US Airlines $200 million a year, and that number is only expected to rise. Scientists predict that by 2050, extreme turbulence could increase several times over, especially in the busy airspace over North America, Europe, and the North Pacific, and it's all due to rising carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere. The ironic part is that air travel is making the problem worse. Planes are 50 times worse than cars per passenger mile in short-term climate impact, meaning aviation is fueling the very turbulence it has to fight. 16. Some flights have been forced to land due to toilet malfunctions. A broken toilet might not seem like a big deal, but it's caused flights to turn around or divert mid-air, sometimes stranding passengers for hours. And then, of course, there was that one British Airways flight in 2015 where things took a truly disgusting turn. Just 30 minutes after takeoff, a passenger's bathroom visit created such an overpowering stench that the air system spread it through the entire cabin. With 7 hours still ahead, the pilot called it quits, turned the plane back to Heathrow, and grounded the flight. Passengers got hotel rooms for the night before flying out the next day. 15. There's actually no safest seat on a plane. If you've ever booked a flight and wondered where the safest spot is, the answer is complicated. Crash studies suggest passengers in the back have a better chance of survival unless it's a rear impact crash, in which case, not so much. Sitting near an exit could be an advantage, but only if there's no fire blocking your escape. And as much as we all hate the middle seat, the numbers say it might actually be the safest, since people on either side of you might just act as a built-in safety buffer. 14. Your aircraft might be more broken than you think. Airlines make money when planes are in the air, not on the ground. So when something breaks, there's always pressure to get them flying again fast. Some fixes, like a broken coffee maker or a flickering cabin light, well, aren't that big a deal. But have you ever heard of the minimum equipment list? Essentially, it dictates what can be ignored and what must be repaired before takeoff. The catch? It allows planes to fly with some systems already out of order, as long as backup systems are still working. Now, in theory, that's fine, until a backup fails mid-flight. The captain ultimately has the final say on whether to fly or not, but if they refuse, the airline can always find someone who won't. 13. The cabin air comes from the engines, not the outside. At cruising altitude, the air is too thin to breathe, so planes pull in and compress air from the engines to pressurize the cabin. It's important to note that it's not the same as ground-level air. Most planes keep it at the equivalent of 8,000 feet to balance cabin pressure. The problem with that is that anything that goes through the engine can end up in the cabin. That includes smoke from engine fires, de-icing fumes, and even toxic chemicals from burning engine oil. 12. Emergency decompression is horrifying. When the cabin crew says, "Put on your own mask before helping others," they really mean it. At high altitudes, the air is so thin that if the cabin loses pressure, you have about 30 to 45 seconds before you pass out from lack of oxygen. As if that's not bad enough, the air at cruising altitude can be negative 60 degrees Celsius or negative 76 degrees Fahrenheit, and decompression can cause violent winds, flying debris, and thick fog inside the cabin. So if that ever happens, get your mask on fast. 11. Your body reacts strangely at high altitudes. At cruising altitude, your body doesn't function the same way it does here on the ground. The lower cabin pressure reduces oxygen levels in your blood, which can lead to dizziness, fatigue, or even mild confusion, especially on long flights. Dehydration tends to happen faster too, because the dry cabin air pulls moisture from your body. Even your taste buds undergo a change at 35,000 feet, which is why airplane food tastes so bland compared to when you eat it on the ground. 10. Not all escape slides double as life rafts. Most people assume that if a plane crashes into the water, the escape slides will keep them afloat. But that's not always the case. You see, some slides will tip over if you try to climb in. That's because planes that usually fly over land aren't required to carry raft-equipped slides because they're heavier and add unnecessary weight. The logic is that if a plane ditches near the coast, rescue teams will get there fast enough. Fortunately, no aircraft without raft slides has ever had to crash land in water. Yet. 9. Researchers had to bribe people to simulate a real emergency. A few years ago, safety experts wanted to run emergency evacuation drills, but there was one big problem. Everyone was too calm when they exited the plane. Nothing like the chaos and panic of a real emergency. To fix it, researchers offered small cash rewards to the first few people off the plane. Just 20 pounds was enough to turn calm passengers into shoving, scrambling evacuees, finally recreating real-world panic. So yeah, money proved what we already knew. In a real emergency, politeness won't save you. 8. Some airlines cut corners on de-icing. Ice buildup on a plane's wings can disrupt aerodynamics and make the aircraft harder to control. Unfortunately, de-icing fluid is expensive, and some budget airlines have been caught cutting corners to save money. In 1994, American Eagle Flight 4184 crashed after ice buildup caused a loss of control, killing all 68 people on board. Regulations have tightened since then, but in extreme cold, icing is still a serious risk. 7. Pilots' mobile devices have caused incidents. A plane's final approach is one of the most critical moments of a flight and requires full concentration from the pilots. Unfortunately, getting closer to the ground increases the chance that their mobile phone will reconnect to a signal, which can lead to unexpected vibrations, beeps, or other distracting noises at a critical moment. In one incident, a Jetstar A320 pilot was so distracted by his phone that he forgot to lower the landing gear before touchdown. In another case, a first officer's phone made an unknown warbling sound during takeoff, nearly causing the flight to be aborted. 6. Planes carry the bare minimum of fuel. Most airlines fly with just enough fuel to reach their destination, and not much more. It's not about cutting corners. Extra fuel adds weight, which burns even more fuel just to carry it. But here's the unsettling part. Regulations only require enough for the trip, a tiny 3 to 5% reserve, and just enough to reach an alternate airport if needed. The last safety net? A final backup of just 30 minutes worth of fuel. If a plane lands with less than that, an investigation is triggered immediately, because at that point, they were basically just running on fumes. 5. Some airlines rely on co-pilots with minimal training. There's a common belief that both pilots in the cockpit have similar levels of experience, but that isn't always true. Some airlines, especially regional carriers, hire co-pilots with minimal flight hours to cut costs, putting extra pressure on the captain, and this lack of experience has contributed to multiple crashes. In 2008, Aeroflot Flight 821 crashed after an inexperienced crew misread the aircraft's instruments, and in 1987, Continental Airlines Flight 1713 crashed partly due to pilots who were unfamiliar with the aircraft type. I know it's not exactly comforting, but it's the truth. 4. Black boxes don't always survive crashes. They're built to withstand fire, deep-sea pressure, and violent impacts. But black boxes aren't indestructible. In fact, in some cases, like Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370, the flight recorder was never recovered, leaving investigators with more questions than answers. And even when they are found, damage or data loss can make it impossible to piece together what really happened. So they're not as infallible as we're made to believe. 3. Emergency landings can happen for the strangest reasons. Apart from the 2015 poop incident, bee swarms have clogged vital sensors, bird strikes have set engines on fire, and in 2023 a Southwest flight had to turn back after a cockpit window cracked mid-air. The flight, headed from Honolulu to San Diego, was forced to do an emergency landing. The cause was never disclosed, but it was a terrifying reminder that even the smallest failures can bring a plane back to the ground fast. 2. There have been flights where almost everyone passed out. In 2005, Helios Airways Flight 522 lost cabin pressure mid-flight, and everyone on board passed out from hypoxia, including the pilots. The plane kept flying on autopilot for over 2 hours until it ran out of fuel and crashed into a hillside in Greece, killing all 121 people on board. Other flights have suffered terrifying decompression events too. In 1989, United Airlines Flight 811 had a cargo door blow off mid-air, which tore a hole in the fuselage and sucked 9 passengers out of the plane. These incidents are rare, but when they do happen, they're devastating. 1. The cargo hold isn't always safe for pets. Flying is stressful enough, but imagine going through it alone in the dark with no idea what's happening. Extreme heat, freezing temperatures, lack of oxygen, and rough handling have led to dozens of pet deaths every year. And I totally know which airline has the worst track record, Delta, but it might be safer just to give you guys the general info. Short-nosed breeds like pugs and bulldogs are banned from airline travel altogether because their breathing issues make them even more vulnerable. But even healthy pets aren't safe. Some have been lost, injured, or so stressed they've chewed themselves bloody. So I think it's safe to say that if you wouldn't sit in the cargo hold yourself, well, your pet shouldn't either. And that's a wrap. But before you go, let's see if you were paying attention. By 2050, extreme turbulence is expected to increase by several 100%. What's causing it? A. Increased air traffic. B. Rising carbon dioxide levels. C. Changes in Earth's magnetic field. Or D. Shifts in the jet stream. Drop your answers in the comments below. And if today's list didn't stress you out enough, wait until you hear the stories in our related video, 25 health insurance nightmares that expose the dark side of healthcare. Every single account reveals what happens when profits matter more than patience. Click on the link right here to check that video out. And as always, don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any content. Check out our Discord, do all the fun social media stuff, and I'll catch you guys again next time. Adios.